Hello everyone and welcome to a huge episode of Breaking Even with Al Paton, the new show on the SuperCoach AFL podcast feed. This would have been huge anyway, 8 days from the first game of the official SuperCoach season for 2025, but now the AFL has thrown everything into chaos by, well, it wasn't really the AFL, it was Cyclone Alfred. We should place the blame appropriately. We now have 2 games postponed that were going to be played this weekend, but now won't be, so we'll jump into what all that means for our SuperCoach teams with my good friend Patch and a very, very special guest. But Patch, hello, welcome aboard. How are you feeling after the AFL blew everything up yesterday?
I've turned into old man shouts at cloud and one specific very large cloud off the coast of southeast Queensland because it's just it's thrown everything into array. But in some aspects, it could be a gift for us. So I'm very keen to unpack it. But otherwise, I'm all right. How are you?
Oh, no, I'm good, Patch. Thank you. Thank you for asking. But we've got the right man here to discuss all this with Joven May, the official reigning SuperCoach champion, won the grand prize last year, ranked number 1 out of nearly 200,000 coaches. So, Joven, great to have you back to check in as the season gets closer. And we did line this up before all this news broke yesterday, but we'll get into all the details in a minute. But how are you feeling?
Yeah, well, super excited, first of all, to be on, but also, this is probably the most exciting part of the fantasy and SuperCoach seasons where, there hasn't been a single failed pick yet. Everyone's looking $1 million. Your team's changing every 5 minutes. There's, good options everywhere. So, yeah, excited to chat with you boys about, how we're lining up for the season. But, yeah, it's an exciting time in the SuperCoach world for sure.
Yeah, we might even have some more great picks to choose from now after this news yesterday. But yeah, we'll get into all that. Reminder to everybody to obviously like, subscribe, leave a review if you can on wherever you're listening, Apple or Spotify. If you're watching on the Code Sports YouTube channel where you can see all our shows this year, including the Phantom's Lair, where I think there was some kind of unmasking going on in the lair yesterday, so don't miss that. And a reminder as well, everybody has a free trial for the first couple of rounds of SuperCoach Plus, so get in and use all those amazing tools, the score, price projections, coach's choice, see how all these ownership numbers are changing at the last second. Optimize button is going to be there for us to use as well, so recommend everybody give that a trial. But we do need to talk about the breaking news, which is that 2 games that were going to be played on opening round are now not going to be played. The Brisbane versus Geelong game was supposed to kick the season off on Thursday night, and then we had Gold Coast versus Essendon, which was originally scheduled for Saturday. They've both been postponed due to the cyclone. So I think, first of all, we should say that is the most important thing is keeping people safe up there, and I think the AFL has made the right call, but it does create some interesting ramifications in fantasy and SuperCoach.
Shout out to anyone listening from the affected areas too. Hope you're okay. Hope you're hunkering down, and I don't know why you're listening to us while this is happening, but stay safe.
Well, Patch, what were your immediate thoughts, apart from that, obviously, but when it comes to SuperCoach, with those games not being played this weekend, and I guess we should say off the top that we don't know at time of recording when they are going to be played. They will be rescheduled at some point during the season. The expectation, I guess, is that Brisbane-Geelong will be played in round 3 when both those teams were originally down to have a bye. So that would seem to make sense and sort of be relatively seamless from the fixture point of view and for SuperCoach. But we're not sure about that for certain. Hasn't been confirmed at this stage, and we don't know what is going to happen with the Essendon Gold Coast game, which is a bit more complicated in terms of their buys.
Yeah, just a little bit. So Essendon and Gold Coast don't share the same early season bias. You can't just slot it in round 4 or round 2 because then, it doesn't work for the other club. As they've got another game lined up, the AFL hasn't indicated when that'll be, but I suspect it'll be either them shuffling mid-season buys or it'll be later on in the season with some suggestions that, they might play it. I don't know if the suggestions are serious or if they've come from the AFL, but if it's played in the pre-finals bye on that Friday night, which, I don't know, could be the, deadest rubber in the history of dead rubbers. But yeah, it's very much a wait and see on them. But yeah, for those joining us quickly, SuperCoach is starting in round 1, so there are no scores counting this week, so it doesn't matter, that we're losing those 2 games for this week. There are no scores, nothing goes live this week. But yeah, it puts a lot of Brisbane and Geelong players back on the cards. Joven, what was the first thing you did when you opened your team up after the news?
Well, first of all, I was actually pretty devastated because I was supposed to be going up to the games because I'm a Geelong supporter and my dad's an Essendon supporter, so we were going to do the doubleheader on the Thursday and the Saturday. So Yeah, that was first of all disappointing that there's no footy, but completely obviously understand the decision. They would have been terrible games, and yeah, we got to look after the safety of all the players. But yeah, in terms of my team, well, to be honest, it makes me want to just I've never really been one to do this, but sort of wipe my team and start afresh, because we've been planning the whole preseason that these guys are going to have early buys, and the Geelong and Brisbane guys, that they were extremely hard to start. I thought a lot of those players, because they were on the bye with two other teams, so it was going to be hard to manage that a bit. But now it opens up, I think, more opportunities to pick not only Geelong and Brisbane players, but also Collingwood and Sydney players, because they've got 2 less teams on that bye. You're not going to have as many trouble, covering for those guys if you've only got 2 or 3 players on those buys. Maybe bring in another 1 or 2. So yeah, probably I haven't really done too much with my team just yet. I might wait till after round 0 and then sort of wipe my team clear, and then have a bit of a look. But yeah, certainly a lot to consider.
We should say that the Supercoach will announce the changes once the AFL has locked in exactly what they're doing, and we don't know for certain that those Geelong Brisbane game will be in round 3, but I think we're sort of going to discuss it, thinking that probably is what is going to happen, and that definitely is what Joven was getting at there. That it will still be a best 18 bye round, because we'll have Collingwood and Sydney on the bye, but with only 2 teams there instead of the 4. Probably that opens it up for picking maybe a couple of those guys that we weren't considering, and obviously Geelong and Brisbane come right back into the frame. So I mean, a couple of other ramifications, I guess, that I thought of was that some of these Essendon rookies that we're looking at picking, and there's probably 4 or 5 of them potentially, might be in our teams, would have gotten earlier. Their prices would have started moving earlier than everybody else if they played in opening round, but now they won't. So that's something to consider. But even though they do still have that early buy, so an Isaac Kako type, might not make as much cash early as we thought he was going to, but that's just something maybe to keep in the back of our mind. And we also don't get a free look at any of these guys that was sort of the bonus of playing in round 0, I guess. So Elijah Sardis, what will his centre bounce time look like when the season starts? We won't know until round 1, and Supercoach is happening for real. So we have to play it a little bit more on faith, and maybe some of the cats that might have been more relevant too, with a Bailey Smith or a Mitch Nevitt, or what's Sam De Koning going to do. So I guess this is what we do with all teams usually in Supercoach, but that was a little free hit that we can get in opening round that we now won't with those 2 teams. So does that affect how you think about any of those guys, Joven?
Yeah, I think it's probably it's different for what sort of player, what sort of price range you're looking at. So I think for the rookies and the mid prices, because you're looking to make a bit of money out of those guys, having that extra look and being assured of their role, and you actually get a glimpse into what their cash generation is going to be like. So if someone like a Kako, I was probably not that keen on starting him, but if he had have come out and scored a 95 in round 1, it's pretty hard to ignore that built-in cash rise that he's going to get. So yeah, I think for rookies and mid prices who are a bit more speculative, even a Sam De Koning, someone like that would have been really good to get a look at, and have a look at how his scoring is going to trend early on in the season. It probably makes me less likely to pick those guys now. But then for the premiums, I think it makes me more likely to pick them, especially if that Geelong and Brisbane game does get rescheduled to round 3. Like they're not missing out on the points to another premium at a similar price that they would have lost, when you had to cover them on their bye. So, it opens up a lot of avenues for a Holmes or a Zorka. I know people are keen on the 2 midfield guys, Dunkley and Neil, and then even an Ashcroft who's, sort of not really a mid-pricer, but, picking him to be an underpriced premium. So I think it definitely, for the premiums and, high-priced guys makes me more likely to pick them. And then the cheaper guys that you're looking to make money out of, it's a big bonus getting that free look at how their cash gen's going to go. So yeah, maybe just reconsider some of those guys that you had the security blanket of having an extra look.
Who do you like, Patch, out of especially talking about those premiums? Tim Mitchell's done an article which is online now across Code Sports and all the platforms on. He's nominated, I think, 8 players that have suddenly jumped into his calculations, or probably into his team, the way Tim's team changes by the minute. But who did you like?
In and out and all over the shop.
Yeah, anyone that you're really thinking of putting in who maybe you hadn't thought about up until now?
So Lachie Neale came in, but he's someone I'd toyed with, and the Phantom's been really keen on him all pre-season. But one guy that did come in, who just kind of playing around, who did slide his way in. I'd had Max Holmes for parts of the pre-season. Didn't love what I saw in the pre-season game against Essendon, and Tom Stewart somehow found his way in, just as a playing kind of unaccountably, switching through the midfield if need be. I don't know, he's just someone I hadn't considered at all due to that bye, and I need to do some more looking and a bit more scratching around, because my team's all over the shop, not only with the bye news, but also I had some of the guys that have been injured. I had Bont and Butters, who we'll talk about in a bit, locked in they hadn't moved all pre-season, so just the whole team's just getting really shaken up, and it's as Joven said, that clear team button has been hit a few times already, and it's still not solving the issue at all.
What are your thoughts on Tom Stewart, Joven, as a Cats fan? So he's a little bit underpriced and sort of been off the radar really this preseason after he had a pretty disappointing probably first half of last year, and then he finished pretty strong. Do you expect him to get back to sort of the old Tom Stewart that we know?
Yeah, well, I think he should have, sort of the prime Tom Stewart role where he's, roaming around in the back line. They've sort of identified, they've got some midfielders. They got Baz Lenker in, and even like a Mitch Nevitt is sort of going to spend a bit more time in there. So I think maybe a few less CBAs to what he had when he was flying home at the end of last year. So I think his role should be good. I don't know. I think one of the biggest watches for Tom Stewart is, do they go back to that tag? Like, he was getting tagged in defence, and that's what sort of, the Geelong coaches moved him to the midfield to, sort of free him up, because it's hard for a guy to, I don't really know why this was, but teams then opted not to tag him because they would have started a tagger in the centre bounces and then had to follow him to halfback. So I guess, that's something to watch out for, is if he does stop copying the tag, does start getting the tags again, like that could affect his scoring. But I think in that role, if he's not tagged, he should be right around the mark. So definitely changes things with no early bye, makes him more enticing.
Yeah, I mean, that D2, D3 sort of spot for me has been a revolving door all pre-season. It's been really hard to find someone and lock them away there that I'm really happy with. And so this does throw up some other options, and Stewart's one of them. Holmes back there as well. And I've currently got Dane Zorko in my team. I actually brought him in maybe Monday, and then this news came out, so it sort of helps, hoping that he does play in round 3. But just looking at the way he scores, I mean, it's sort of, written him off a bit, thinking, well, I'm not considering him because of the bye, and also because, he's 36, I think, now, and, eventually, surely he's going to do a hammy or something like that. But I did that for the first, 12 or 13 rounds last year, until I finally came to my senses and got him in when he was just, scoring 120 every week. And when you look at Brisbane's early fixture, they play West Coast in round 2, and then, probably it seems like Geelong in round 3, but then Richmond in round 4. And I just shudder to think what him and, Lachie Neale probably throw him in the same boat, what they could do against the Eagles, and then especially the Tigers. I think, and there's no Kitty Coleman, certainly for the first part of the season. So I think Zorko could put out some absolutely massive scores in that time. And so, that's sort of the answer to my D2 puzzle at the moment. But
the seagulls at the MCG won't know what hit them when Dane Zorko starts seagulling it up in round 4.
I suppose the only worry is that how often will the ball actually get into the Brisbane backline in that game. So, but I know you mentioned Neale, and Phantom has been hot on him for ages as well, and he is. His record against Richmond's phenomenal. Anyway, he was scoring 150s against us even when Richmond was good. So, again, could be another one who could go absolutely massive. So, that early fixture is playing a role. But there's certainly two guys. I mean, Will Ashcroft's a tricky one, because again, he's someone I hadn't really planned for him at all, but now, should I be planning for him? I mean, he doesn't really fit in my team unless I, really do a major reshuffle. I mean, how much would you be prepared to, just change your structure completely, Joven, at this stage? Not just, a like-for-like swap, but, changing how many primos you've got in each line.
Yeah, well, he's probably one that I wouldn't be that interested in starting him. It's more like put him on the watch list, and then you can trade into him before his price rises. It's one of I've heard Selby talk about this before, like in SuperCoach, if you're banking on a guy sort of naturally progressing, which is what we're sort of thinking for Ashcroft, he's not going to have a huge role change or anything like that. Like, he's probably still going to be third in line at the CBAs. You're sort of banking on him just being a gun and improving enough naturally, and, just full pre-season under his belt that he can push up to, 100, 105. And because his price doesn't move after the first 2 weeks, you get to have a look at that. Have a look at the midfield split. Have a look at, I know you're missing out on, he has got some juicy matchups early, but still to get a guy that could be, sort of a top 15 midfielder, if things go right, to get him at his price, you don't have to, you can wait for it, but you can wait to see it before you jump on. So, yeah, probably wouldn't start him, but yeah, just one to watch closely. And then if you do have a guy that doesn't go so well, or a failed mid-price on another line, and you can, switch things around and get on him in round 3 if that game does go ahead.
All right, well, we'll jump into what will be a regular segment on Breaking Even show each week. Is an injury report brought to you by HBF. And Patch has mentioned his name already, but since I think we last spoke last week, the news came out of Marcus Bontempelli injuring his calf, and he's going to miss 6 weeks. And
a complicated injury to his calf, which is not the word you want to have describing a calf injury.
No.
That's not. No, thank you.
And I think we may have known about Butters, but maybe not the severity of it, that 6 to 8 weeks for him. Errol Goulden got injured on the weekend as well. Did you have, I think I was in exactly the same boat as Patch, that I had Butters and Bont just locked into those M1, M2 slots for most of the preseason. So it does necessitate, a pretty big structural change, taking out the 2 most expensive midfielders. But is that where you were at, Joven, or did you... I know you go for a bit more value, so were these guys in your team when that news came out?
I'd had one of them at times in my teams, not throughout the whole preseason, but I never had both of them. I think when the news came out about Butters, he was at M1 for me, just because of that early run I was liking the look of, and then took him out. And then, so, yeah, it hasn't changed a whole lot for me, and it was probably, bit of a blessing in disguise for me, because I was going to anti-pod those guys, and then if they do come out and go on a tear and people are captaining them, it can hurt you. So yeah, you never want to see players get injured, but it should make teams a bit more interesting in the midfield, like forces people to try and hunt value a bit more. So yeah, it's definitely interesting for Supercoach.
Who did you bring in to replace them, Patch? Was it a straight swap?
It solidified Nick Dacos in my team. I'd been trying to find ways to fit him in after he tore Richmond up from about 6 minutes on the ground and scored 160. So he slid in, and then kind of Neil had been in and out, and I then started looking for value. But I want to hear about Joven's side and how what structure and value you're looking at, because I assume Connor Rosey has come into the frame for a lot of people, and he's been flirting with coming into my team as well. What are some of the value picks you're looking at in the midfield that he just mentioned?
Yeah, so I've had Connor Rosey for, I don't think he's left my side pretty much at all throughout the preseason. So I was actually a bit disappointed. I was sort of saying, slow down, Connor. Might have gotten a few too many people to jump on. But yeah, he's one. I think, obviously Clayton Oliver, he picks himself, and he's looked awesome. So that's good to see. I've liked Andy Brayshaw for a lot of the preseason. He's actually my M1 at the moment, so he's my highest priced midfielder. I just think he can push up to, sort of that 110, 115, and he's sort of, I like that he's second in line for the tag behind Sarong. And then another guy that hadn't really considered a lot, I considered him early, and then he got injured in the preseason and then looked amazing on the weekend, is Christian Petrarca. And so I've actually brought him into my team at the moment. He's my M2 behind Brayshaw. So that's sort of a bit of a preseason hype pick. And as I said, take my team with a grain of salt at the moment, because it's going to change after round 0 for sure. And then, once teams release on round 1 night, I always end up making a few changes. Selection never goes the way you think it will. So, just keep that in mind. But Petrarca, I do like the look of him as a bit of value in the midfield.
So does that mean you've got then 4 rookies on field in the midfield?
I've got 3, and I've got 1 mid-pricer and it's Peatling at the moment, but I like Ollie Hollands as well in that spot. It's more of a structural rather than, based on the player. It's sort of just, that's like the structure that I would like to go with. The 3 midfield rookies, I think I'm pretty comfortable fielding. And then, 1 mid-pricer, but, Peatling could go up or down depending on what other players I like. He's not set in stone.
What did you think of his role on the weekend? Just didn't seem to maybe get as much midfield time as we might have hoped, but, still scored okay.
Yeah, he was a bit disappointing. I was sort of expecting that Adelaide midfield to be busy. It was exactly that. I still think in the season he could get up to 50% CBAs. Like, it seems like in the second half they sort of subbed on Sid Draper, and then he came in and got a lot of CBAs. Peatling was still around the ball enough for my liking. Like, even when he was playing or starting at half forward, he would push up, and he only had 2 tackles in this game. And one thing about Peatling is he's always going to tackle. So I think maybe that was just preseason. He wasn't maybe going as hard, or it was just a more outside game. I think his role's not ideal. Like, if he was going 65%, 70 CBAs, I could easily see him going 95, no stress. But if he's only getting 40 to up to 50% CBAs, maybe it is sort of falls somewhere in the 80s. But he's still value even if he goes in the 80s. So I think one to just I don't know, he's in my team at the moment, but I won't have any problems culling him if I find better options and a better structure.
And of those, so you've got 3 rookies on field there in the midfield. I think I put a tweet out a couple of days ago, and it's something that I'm still wrestling with. There's 4 or 5 of those sort of higher priced midfield rookies that all look great. Is it a matter of picking the 3 or 4 that you really love, or can you have a couple on the bench? How are you approaching those guys?
Yeah, so at the moment on field, I've got Sardis, and then I've got Sheldrick. He's been in my team for a while, and then I think a bit of added job security with Goulden going down, and Mills obviously missing the first bit of the season. I think he should be there. And then I've got Nevitt. And I think you can sort of, like, the midfield is the place where you can play a lot of rookies this year. Like, I've only got 1 in defence and then none in the forward line. So the majority of my midfield, majority of my rookies are in the midfield. So, that's where I think, even an Ashcroft that's on my bench, and I've got, I've had O'Driscoll in and out of my team as well. I think, if I shuffle things around, I'd like to find a way to fit him in. He looked pretty good after quarter time. But yeah, the rookies in the midfield, we were sort of looking at it all pre-season thinking that the rookies were going to be good in the midfield. And even though we've had a couple of guys sort of, Jagger obviously got injured, unfortunately, and then Harvey Langford didn't look as good on the weekend, but still think we've got a lot of good options to go through there.
And you don't mind spending a bit more on the bench if they're the best options?
Yeah, I like paying up for good job security rookies. Obviously, ideally you get a guy that has good job security and good scoring potential and is cheaper, and you just go down to him. But I don't think there's a heap of those guys this year. I think, most of the options are, a bit higher priced. And so I think you just let that dictate your structure. You do have to pay up for those guys. And it's no good having a guy that, maybe plays 1 or 2 games and then it's just a red dot for you. I'd rather have someone that has a bit more of an extended run in their team, and then you make a bit more cash out of them, even if they're a slow burn.
So Patch, your eyebrows raised significantly, sort of Millhouse style, when Joven mentioned the forward line there. No rookies at all, I think you said?
None at all, it sounded like. So talk us through the forward line then, because there are a few rookies down there that look quite good. Sam Davidson popped off in the Dogs practice match, and they've also got a lot of injuries, so it looks like he'll play a bunch of game time. Is it a lack of confidence in the rookies down there in terms of not having them on field, or are you just really enamoured with the mid prices we've got down there? What's the thought behind that forward line setup?
Yeah, it's probably less to do with. Well, I don't think there's a heap of rookie options in the forward line. First of all, like, I really like Davidson. He's on my bench, and then other than that, I don't have a whole heap of confidence in the rest of the guys. Like, Hewitt, he sort of looked like he was going to be fieldable at one stage, and then he's, been managed a bit and in the B team at Match Sim and whatnot. And then, Connor Stone, maybe, but I don't know if his scoring is going to be that great. So yeah, I've got lots of value guys. That's probably the main thing for me. And I remember a few years ago, there was a year where it was like Rosie, Canelio, Dunkley, like all these guys were available
Taranto
as forwards,
was
and
a
I just
forward,
ended up picking. Yeah, and I think Goulden was a forward maybe even that year as well, or a year after. And I think if these guys present themselves and their value in the forward line, I'm just going to pick them. So yeah, I've got heaps of these value guys. I even see, the top two, Horn Francis and Rankin, as a bit of value. And then you go down to McRae, Bailey Smith, Sanders, you got Caleb Daniel, and even a Garcia at a bit of an inflated rookie price. I see him as a good option as well. So yeah, less to do with the rookies and more to do with just wanting to get those good value guys who I think they're going to score a lot better than a rookie and make a lot of cash. So I'd just rather have them.
So do we trust Bevo with Riley Sanders?
Well, I wouldn't have in the past, but I sort of feel like Bevo, he just has to play him in the midfield now with Bont going down and Treloar out for the first little bit. There's question marks over Ed Richards, but I think he should be back in round one. So I think there's just going to be, we've seen it all pre-season. They've talked him up. He's going to be getting CBAs, and then both practice games, he's had a lot of CBAs. He didn't look amazing and score amazing in that second official practice match, but I'm not that worried about him. He's got the scoring pedigree. I think he will score, given he's got, I've got pretty good confidence in him having a good role in that forward line now. So yeah, less scared of Bevo I think he's just going to be forced into playing Sanders in the midfield. So yeah, I feel comfortable in locking him in at this stage. And
that leaves the ruck. What are your moves there? Another injury that I think we talked about last week, Mark Pitney going down, has made Tom De Koning a much more popular selection. Carlton, obviously, you've got Cherry and Gawn, very expensive. And then the other one who I'd sort of written off a bit, thinking I just don't want the headache of wondering what West Coast is doing with their rucks. I'm happy to pass on Matt Flynn. Then he goes out and scores 98 against Cherry. And I'm thinking, man, I do have to find a way to get him in. So have you got Flynn, and what's your ruck line looking like at this stage?
Yeah, I'm TDK and Flynn at the moment. So I had
R2.
Flynn at the start of the preseason. Yeah, Flynn R2. I had Flynn at the start of the preseason, and it was more just, what I was mostly looking out for is he going to be the first ruck choice and get, sort of a 70% ruck split share for West Coast. That's all I think he really needs. Even when he was at Giants, he was never doing massive CBA and ruck contest percentage numbers. So I think where he's priced at, and if his body his body is the major issue. He's never really played more than like 15 games in a season, but I don't need him to play the whole season. He's a stepping stone, and if I do see sort of a Sherry maybe not holding his value for the earliest part of the season, and then if Flynn can make me enough money, and then I sort of boost up to Sherry and in upgrade season in round 7 or something, that would be the ideal outcome for Flynn. So yeah, he's in there at the moment.
Do you have a contingency plan if he goes down, say round 3, he goes down with a back injury or whatever it is, or is that not something you'll just burn that bridge when you get to it?
Yeah, I think I'll just deal with that if it arises. I don't like to usually plan too far in ahead, so yeah, if that happens, it'll be unfortunate, but yeah, I'll sort that out when it happens. And
what about the flex position? Brand new this year, obviously, for SuperCoach. I think Flynn is sitting there for me at the moment, but a lot of people like the idea of maybe being able to pick an extra ruckman, but I'm not sure if you found another one, or what's your strategy down there at this stage?
Yeah, when I first brought Flynn in after his good performance, I did bring him into flex, but then I've shuffled things around. I've actually got an extra forward in the flex at the moment. It's Garcia sitting in flex for me at the moment. I like having a bit of midfield forward, like flexibility through the flex. Like that, I think that is optimizing it to, it allows you to shuffle things around, especially in the buys where you've got players missing, and you can, get your best 18 players on field. So I think that's what I like about having the flex there as a mid forward, and Garcia, I like him as an option. So he's sitting there at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with that take on the flex. I've currently got Flynn there, and I'm not enjoying the lack of flexibility that comes with that in the flex. In that, you not only, have him locked in, but also it means you then need to pick like an Archer Reed at R3, which, if he doesn't play it, just, you've got one less player generating cash, which I don't love at all. And he can't play Flynn on the bench. So it's just kind of a bit of a pickle. Yeah, I agree with you. I reckon it needs to be either a rookie or that sort of mid-price cash generator. Yeah, mid-forward kind of swing is ideal, I think.
Yeah, Garcia is really fits the bill, doesn't he? I had him there for a while, but then I sort of had to find a way to get Flynn in, and I did toy with leaving Cherry out, and then what do you have, 14 tackles or something on the weekend? I mean, he's not going to do that every week, surely, but his early fixture looks like it might be bit tricky, so maybe there's a way there that he does lose a little bit of value, but he's going to be a scary watch not having him, I imagine.
Yeah, well, especially when he eats Tim English alive in round one, he should be pretty annoying to come up against. But yeah, I think it's just he does have that hard run, and maybe Sherry is matchup proof. Like if he tackles like the way he does on the weekend, it probably doesn't matter who he's up against. But then again, I look at Flynn is not the toughest matchup, and also, that Eagles midfield isn't exactly, clearing out of stoppages with any class. So, Sherry just sort of comes down and just, wraps him up straight away. If he comes up against a bit more of a slick outfit in the midfield, maybe doesn't get as many tackles. And I don't know exactly how to play out, but I think Sherry maybe just loses a tiny bit of value at the start of the season, and it could be enough that, I'm happy going against him to start.
I mean, I guess you're hoping that Flynn scores around that. If he gets 98 every week, that'd be amazing. But, 90 plus, maybe you're only losing 20 or 30 points in that spot. And, by saving, $500, $400,000, you can make that up somewhere else.
Yeah, it's more about, just finding value across my whole team rather than, just in one spot. So that's the way I view it.
Fair enough. So we the guts of this show each week will be questions from listeners. So we've obviously spent a fair bit of time there talking about the breaking news and Joven's team, but we do have some questions which we can run through to finish off the show. So More Pointy on X has asked, Patch, maybe I'll throw this at you to start with, which we have sort of touched on. Anyone you're bringing in now that the Cats-Lions game is delayed, and also anyone from the pre-season games that, we've had a full round of official practice matches. Was there anyone there? He suggested a Sheasel or a Dacos who put up these kind of insane numbers who have forced their way into your squad.
As I mentioned, Tom Stewart's kind of, flitting around at the moment. I don't know if he stays there. Lockie Neal was the big one that's moved in and is unlikely to move back out. So he's the big one, I think. And, there's the argument for Zorko as well. As for preseason games, Finn O'Sullivan has pushed his way in now as a must-have. So that's just cemented the four rookies on field for me, because I don't really want to drop any of those guys. I don't want to compromise on that. So it's kind of the rookies that have really solidified a bit from there. And, even looking at like a James Leake who had a big preseason game in terms of centre bounce attendances, which shows they've got some faith in him at the very least. So he's now in there for a little bit. Sheldrick's come in. They're the main ones, aside from Tom De Koning, who's proven that he's probably, even though he wasn't really playing against anyone other than Lockie Keefe, he was the one that really rammed home the not so much that he'll be good, I knew that, but just how painful it will be to watch him score well and not be in my side.
Yeah, and Carlton playing Richmond in round one.
Yeah,
especially given the way, I think, Nank's a pretty decent ruckman, although other rucks can score well against him, but the way TDK scores around the ground with his clearance kind of work, I think, that would be pretty hard to watch if you didn't have him. I mean, I agree with you on Finn O'Sullivan. I brought him in as well. It just gave me flashbacks of those other North top-end draft picks, especially Harry Sheasel. If you remember a couple of years ago, we weren't going to pick... Well, I don't think I even started Harry Sheasel that year.
Start him.
Because he was supposed to be a forward pocket type. And then in the first game, what do you know, he lines up at half-back and gets a million possessions and obviously went on to be one of the best rookies of the year, probably the best. And, Sullivan just, it's just Clarko, that's how he likes to play these first year, elite sort of mids, just ease them into things. And O'Sullivan's been floating around a wing for a lot of the preseason, but then in the second half of that game, he was sort of more around that half-back area, taking a couple of intercepts, which were nice. If he could be another one in that sort of production line, I think that's definitely something I want to be a part of. So
and Zane Dursma getting the Frankie Grimes treatment of I'm played off half-back. It's like, you've played off half-back? Sure, who hasn't?
So he was definitely a big one for me. Who else came into my team? I mean, Adam Chera's been floating in and around the, he's been in and out at different times. And again, Carlton's fixture looks really nice early. So he did a lot to make me think, he's going to have a really good year. Nazai Wanganeen Miller was an interesting one he's still there in my side. I've had him for a lot of the preseason, but again, shuffling, not really 100% happy with how that backline looks. But then he looked really good in the first half. Against Port, although it was a pretty awful game, certainly from a St Kilda point of view. But then he plays the whole second half basically in the centre bounces. So I'm not sure quite what Ross Lyon was playing out there, but hopefully just a little bit of experimentation in the preseason. But Joven, was there anyone that you sort of, confirmed what you were thinking or maybe crossed someone off the list based on how they went in those Amy games?
Yeah, well, probably maybe one that I crossed off the list that was in my team and I was liking a lot was Trent Rivers. I thought that even with Petrarca and Viney coming back, maybe Petrarca would spend a bit more time forward and Rivers could be the third or fourth guy, but he dropped down to like the fifth guy. Even Ed Langdon overtook him, which I didn't really see that coming. So, that just having Ed Langdon in that mix, and if he is only getting 30% time on 30% CBAs, and he has time on ground problems as well sometimes, Trent Rivers. So he's one that, I was looking for value in defence and, just didn't quite show enough definitely for me to start him. If something changes in that midfield, I can still bring him in. But, steering clear from starting him, I think.
Another question on X. Ben Morgan has asked, Patch, thoughts on forward line structure? JHF, Rankin, McRae, Daniel, Smith, they all must-haves. And who out of that lot would you potentially fade?
If I had a gun to the head and had to fade one of them, Bailey Smith just feels... I don't have any concrete data. I don't have anything other than vibes to go off. Bailey Smith feels like the one who's in that weird middle ground where McRae and Daniel, I'm comfortable, can be keepers, and Smith might just be outside that top 10 to 8 forwards. I think the Horny one and Rankin are the two that'll be top 2 locked in. Whether or not you can start them depends on how much you trust the forward rookies and whether or not you like Joven and going with a Garcia and a Sanders as well. I'm currently at the point where I've got of those 5, Smith is one I don't have, but don't love not starting him, especially if he goes well. Everyone's got him. It then hurts a little bit. So it's tough. Have you got the Horny one yet, Al?
Well, yes, I did leave that out when I was talking about changes to my team, but I have caved on Jason Horne-Francis.
He's finally in.
So I was just toying with the idea of what my team looked like without him, and it's look at all this list. Can you fit them all in? And he was one. I thought, could I maybe get him later on for, not that much more expensive, but it's not looking like that now. I mean, I was a bit nervous about the centre bounces at Port. How many would he get? But with Butters out now, and I mean, it seems like he was basically locked in there before that anyway. So he's looking incredible. So yes, he has come into my team. The one I don't have currently, which I would love to find it, if anyone's got an extra few $100,000 to loan me to get Isaac Rankin in, because he looked fantastic and was getting all the centre bounces at Adelaide, which is what we were really hoping for. Have you got Rankin at the moment, Joven?
Yeah, I've got both. I've got Horne-Francis and Rankin at the moment. I think maybe the biggest thing for me is just, I'm pretty confident that those two will be top 2, if not top 3. Maybe McRae jumps up there, but they've both got awesome roles, and we've seen them score well in the roles before. Like Rankin, he went on an incredible stretch sort of through the back half of last year. They've talked him up that they want to play him in the midfield. He is great as a forward, but I think he does do his best damage in the midfield. And if Adelaide are going to, I think now's the time that they do want to be pushing for another finals tilt. So I think their best footy will be with Rankin in the midfield, and yeah, I think he can go, push himself up to, I think he's priced at 98, go 105 plus, and I like that in the forward line. Just getting if he doesn't get injured, you're not going to have to use a trade on him. You're pretty confident that he's going to be around the mark.
Yep, a couple of quick ones to finish. Steve Smith is asking about the round 12 buy. I know, Joven, we spoke to you early in the preseason and you said you don't think about that till about round 10. So maybe I'll ask Patch, do you have any issues with, especially in the ruck, you've got Cherry and TDK both have the buy that round. And then there's a bunch of other players like from the Bulldogs, I think also have the buy that week. So he's asking maybe a Nank could be a sort of a pod option in the ruck instead, but is that something you'd be worrying about at this stage?
No, especially not with the possibility that the AFL might be shuffling the buys anyway with this Gold Coast Essendon game. Obviously not confirmed, but it's just kind of, confirmation bias for me of just like, I'm not too stressed about it to start with. And, we've got best 18. By that stage, we should be getting towards full premium. Not a huge concern. If you have the, we've all got the SuperCoach Gold trial, play around with the buy settings, and if you see your entire team grayed out in one round, then maybe look to change it, but otherwise don't stress. Half your team's rookies or mid-prices at this stage who you won't have by the middle of the year. Don't overthink it.
And we don't know what TDK is going to do with once Pitner returns, so that's a position that might change. And anything can change with, we know, in previous years, there's plenty of injuries and everything else that gets thrown at us. So, yeah, I think that's a fair way into the future. So that's it for the reader questions. But just thought we'd finish off by asking Joven that we do still have 2 opening round games, Sydney and Hawthorn kicking off the season on Friday night, and we've got the Giants and Collingwood. So who are you watching in those matches with a view to deleting your team and starting again after opening round and before next Thursday?
Yeah, well, I think there's lots of relevant players in both games. For Hawthorn and Sydney game, I think down back, Sicily, I'd like to have a good look at him and, does he get swung forward much or at all? That's one thing to look out for. Matt Roberts, how much distribution is he getting off half back? Sheldrick in the midfield. Will Day, as I'd like to have a look at. Hasn't been in my side for a little bit, but I'm still pretty interested in him. And then in the other game, I think it's maybe a few less relevant players. Probably not really looking at what Dacos does. Like, I think I already know what he's going to do. His score in round 1's not going to change my mind on him. I think maybe a Perryman down back. Not so much role. I think I know what role he's going to get, but how does the scoring potential look in game and when he's not playing against Richmond in the preseason? That's a big one to see. Those are probably the main guys, I think. Patch,
if Dacos gets a Toby Bedford tag and he scores 70, would that make you nervous about starting him?
No, I don't think so. I think he's going to score. He'll be a top 5 midfielder come season's end, and I think at this stage, you've decided if you want to go with the more value picks or if you want to go with the expensive guys, and I don't think opening round should change that too much. If Dacos pops off and scores a lot of points, they're points we can't get. Maybe you've got the consideration that his price will start dropping, but similar approach to the preseason games, trying not to overreact to it. So either way, I think I'll be starting him either way, and it'll be what it'll be.
Yeah, I mean, I liked all those players that Joven mentioned, and the other one I'd just add to it would probably be just those any of the rookies, and especially in the back line, we've got a few. You mentioned Leak at GWS, and then the Swans guys are Ben Paton or Riley Bice if he gets a game. Just hoping that there's someone like last year, Blake Howes. I hadn't even heard of him before opening round, and he came out and scored 90-something for Melbourne and was an easy pick in the back line. So someone like that would be great. Would solve a few issues for us about who to pick, especially on the bench in the back line. So, yeah, we'll be watching those games closely, and there will be live Supercoach points. As Patch said, these games don't count officially towards the Supercoach season, which kicks off in round 1, but we will have live scores on the SuperCoach app and across the match centres. So you can follow the scores and maybe boot guys out of your team if you're not happy with them, or make as many changes as you like up until the season officially starts on the 13th of March. And there is plenty more to come before then. A bit later today, I think I'll try and do a bit of a video of what my team looks like at the moment. We'll have the first episode of our live teams show tomorrow, and then next week there's more breaking even with us and the Phantoms Lair on a Monday, and I think the Phantoms lining up Dan Batten for another Rookie Bible special. So heaps of content coming your way. Patch, thanks for jumping on.
Pleasure. Thank you, Al.
And Joven, great to talk to you again. We might have to talk to you again before in a week's time, given what you said about how many changes you're likely to make.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on, Al, and good luck to everyone finalising your teams over the next week or so, and enjoy opening round.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, this is the most fun part of the SuperCoach season. So enjoy, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.